Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Blake, and I am a senior from New Hampshire in SLHS here at Purdue. Welcome back to Crossroads Conference of 2014. We are excited to start this session, and I am honored to introduce Dr. Oliver Wendt and Clinical Assistant Professor Emily Studebaker. Before we get started, I have a few announcements. If you wish to earn CEUs, please fill out the record sessions of attended form. When you have attended your last session, please turn in the CEU forms at the table outside. Also, please remember to complete and turn in the conference evaluation and questionnaire. We value your comments and you make and take them seriously while planning future conventions. We are grateful for our sponsors for their presence at the convention. Please support them by visiting the tables in the break room, which is room 302. You will also find refreshments and Nishla and Paso volunteers at the break room with some merchandise. Restrooms are across and down the hall. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop one of the volunteers. Each of us has a name badge and a ribbon to ask your questions. Finally, please remember to turn off all cell phones. Dr. Wendt is an assistant professor in the departments of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences and Educational Studies at Purdue University. His current research investigates the efficacy of augmentative and alternative communication strategies, including graphic symbols, picture exchange communication systems, and generating speech devices for individuals on the autism spectrum that present with little or no functional speech. Dr. Wendt specializes in the single subject experimental designs with meta-analyses of these studies. He has published treatment studies and several systematic reviews of AAC research in autism. In addition to a major textbook on assistive technology, Dr. Wendt is also the co-founder of AAC software company by the name of SPEAKall, LLC, which is dedicated to providing the best evidence-based AAC solutions for developing communication, speech, and language skills in individuals with autism and/or severe communication disorders. Mrs. Studebaker is a certified speech-language pathologist and a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences. In addition to supervising practicum experiences for graduate students, the focus of her clinical work involves treating individuals with ASD. Prior to coming to Purdue, she worked at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders at Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, Maryland, under Rebecca Lander. Again, I am honored and excited to introduce Dr. Wendt and Mrs. Studebaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and thank you all for coming and being here and your willingness to learn about a very exciting development here at Purdue. Our title of our talk is SPEAKall, an evidence-based approach to speech and language development through augmentative and alternative communication. And before we get started, I have a few things to disclose. The SPEAKall application was originally developed for research in my lab here on the Purdue campus. The first prototype was put together by an undergraduate engineering program that is called Engineering Projects and Community Service, or EPICS for short. And these students did a fantastic job putting this first prototype together. And once we released it on iTunes, it became a big deal. It was quickly adopted in the autism and AAC communities. Within a month, we had 800 to 1,000 downloads. In a little bit over a year, we had already over 17,000 downloads. Currently, we have close to 30,000 downloads. And then the requests for upgrades, for further advanced, more professional versions, and the demand for technical assistance became so overwhelming that we could no longer accommodate this out of my research lab. So I'm incredibly grateful that Purdue University put a startup around this and is now helping to put this out on the market in a very professional way. And this startup company is called Speak Modalities, and Speak Modalities provides much more advanced mechanism for supports, is developing advanced versions of this technology. The funding streams through Speak Modalities helps to continue the work, and we have an ongoing relationship between the startup company and my research lab. This is important for you to know because you want to know when you look into a new technology who is behind it and what are these entities' interests and so forth. I should disclose that I'm a co-founder of that startup company, and that I'm also serving as Chief Science Officer for it. Our talk will mostly focus on individuals that are on the autism spectrum, but the procedures and intervention strategies that you will be learning about apply to really a larger range of individuals who have severe speech and language developmental disorders. We all know that in autism, one of the hallmark features is a lack in or complete delay of the development of spoken language. It is actually estimated that up to 66% of these children do not develop enough communicative speech, end up not having enough sufficient natural speech or writing to meet their daily communication needs. And then they become candidates for an area of intervention that we call augmentative or alternative communication, or AAC for short. There are a variety of AAC strategies out there for those on the autism spectrum. Very early on, clinicians try to teach manual signs and gestures, and this is a good strategy to get some initial communication going, to teach symbolic understanding, symbolic comprehension. And those gestures, those early signs, can serve as a precursor for later speech and language development. However, one of the big limitations is that the communication partners, the environment in which the individual is functioning, also has to be fluent in those signs and gestures that are being taught. Then there are low-tech strategies, things such as using pictographic symbol sets and systems to communicate. The most popular strategy is the so-called picture exchange communication system, which makes use of the visual strengths that we see in these learners. The idea behind the picture exchange communication system is that we are cutting out symbols, we are laminating them, and we're putting them together in these picture exchange communication books. The child then gets to pick up such a picture card and hands it over in return for a desired item. As the symbol vocabulary grows, more and more picture cards have to be laminated and have to be glued into these books. You can see how this can become a little bit cumbersome over time, and it's easy to lose some of those cards. With recent advances in the high technology side of the field, we see more and more adoption of what we call speech-generating devices that provide synthesized or digitized speech. These devices can come to us in two different forms. They can be called, or they can be dedicated devices, meaning they are serving solely the purpose of AAC intervention. Here's an attempt designed by a father of a child with severe autism to put that picture exchange communication system on a speech-generating device. The idea now is no longer does the child have to exchange those picture cards. These picture cards can be recorded, and the child can learn to put that sentence strip together on the device, and then the device provides speech output, and it's much easier to walk into an unfamiliar communication environment, and you're easier being understood by a large variety of communication partners who may or may not be familiar with the picture exchange communication system. A big hype these days is experienced as when it comes to tablet devices. The most popular probably being the iPad that can be equipped with a large variety of different AAC apps for intervention purposes. The bottom line, one of the bottom lines from today's session from your friends here at the Ivory Tower of Research is, ideally, we want to see you adopting evidence-based speech and language learning strategies, and this also applies to AAC technology devices such as the iPad and other tablets. So we want to rely on tablets and devices and software that comes with those devices where there is some data behind it, some real research evidence to show there is a benefit and these solutions actually do work. Finding the right app is a huge challenge because, first of all, there are 10,000 zillions of apps out there. When it comes to autism, this challenge even increases because not all of the apps that are out there are particularly suitable for intervention with a child that has severe autism. Many of these apps, or this entire app place, can be a very noisy place, meaning a lot of these things present with bells and whistles, present with too many sensory stimuli that can easily overload the autistic learner. What we want to remember about individuals on the autism spectrum is that they often present with more severe, more intense cognitive and sensory processing problems. For example, it is very difficult for a child with severe autism to filter out and pay attention to truly salient stimuli from a very sensory-rich environment. So if there is a context like this, or a scenario such as this one, the child with severe autism is often unable to tell what should I pay attention to, what is background information, and what are the characters or the salient information that I have to pay attention to and that I have to manipulate. Similarly, if apps are presenting with icons and symbols that are not very iconic and that are very abstract, this also increases the learning curve and the cognitive load for the autistic student. Some other apps might have very hierarchical organizations, meaning you have to go to one type of category first, people or actions or things, and then go to a sub-level and another sub-level before you actually get to that symbol that the student is supposed to activate. Again, this increases cognitive load and makes many of these apps not ideally suited for autism intervention. Then you might have scenarios where there is just too much going on, too many bells and whistles, and the child might engage in more sensory-seeking activities or behaviors or self-stimming behaviors to kind of explore what do all these buttons do, but they are not really using them in a way for functional communication and as it is intended actually by the app. So when we created our SPEAKall application, we wanted to do something that reduces that noise through a very simple, straightforward, and basic design. Our design principle has always been less is more. The SPEAKall app can teach an early symbol vocabulary up to the point where you are creating simple sentences. You are moving a learner from being pre-linguistic to being an early communicator, increasing the symbol vocabulary and helping this person understand and perform simple sentences on that iPad application. The application is very customizable to each child's specific needs. It seamlessly connects with the picture exchange intervention. You can put the same symbols on there. The difference, however, is instead of exchanging a picture card, now the child learns to do a drag and drop and they can put these simple sentences together. There's no hierarchical organization. Symbol vocabulary is stored in activity sheets, and the child can go through those activity sheets with a simple swipe or with a simple activation. And then what's nice about it is they can just do drag and drop onto that sentence strip. I have deactivated the voice output now so that this doesn't interfere with the presentation. Another couple features that I want to mention to you, very simple. It helps to keep the child within the app. They cannot get out of this. They cannot browse off to YouTube, to other games they want to play and so forth, because we all have seen this. There's so many other exciting things to do on an iPad. Once they get started, they easily browse off to something else. When you teach these symbol cards or you teach symbolic comprehension, symbolic communication, it is very important that they truly pay attention to the symbols. Oftentimes, they learn that just the act of activating a symbol or exchanging a symbol, that just this mere act gets them what they want. And then they no longer pay a lot of attention to what's actually being displayed on the symbol. That inhibits and prevents their ability to connect a real referent with that picture or photograph that's on there. To counterbalance that, we have a return and shuffle feature that you can activate. And every time a new trial starts, the learner goes back. Those symbols are randomly put at different places, and that forces them to truly look at it. Later on, this can be deactivated because as symbol vocabularies grow, we don't want to confuse them too much. But in the beginning, it turned out that this is a very helpful feature. I'm going to pass this around. Feel free to play with it. Like I said, the audio is currently disabled, so you can not disturb anything or nothing can go wrong. It's fairly easy to use. There is a manual, but you don't even have to read it, and it's very parent-friendly. We will later see the results from a parent intervention studies where parents learn to use that with their child on the autism spectrum. And most importantly, we have done several studies behind this to show that this is effectful, that this design principle works, and it creates benefits for the child. We have behavioral studies as well as neurophysiological studies that are documenting the effects of this intervention. I want to show the highlights from one of these studies, a study that is currently about to be completed. And this is about training parents to become interventionists for their child. You could do the same thing with colleagues in your clinic or in your school district. The same intervention protocols and training manuals would apply. In our project, the parents were given some basic AAC education and intervention, so they would know how to use SPEAKall on an iPad with their child. We were then monitoring the effects that this has on teaching requesting skills to their children. Requesting is often one of the first developmentally appropriate skills that comes in, that is being taught to kids that are severely autistic and nonverbal. And then it was very important for us to monitor the effects on speech production. One of the big myths out there is, when you talk to caretakers and practitioners, teachers in the school systems and so forth, my child is never going to speak once we infuse AAC, whether it's a device or PECs or an app on a tablet. There's always this fear out there that once I go down this venue, my child is going to be hesitant to use his or her own words, and they will always be dependent on that AAC strategy. So it was very important to us to take a look at that and to prove that this is wrong. All right. Another core deficit in autism is a difficulty with generalization skills. So once a certain set of skills is being taught, we want to make sure it transfers over to items that have not actively been taught. In our experiment, we taught requesting for snacks, and we took generalization probes to see can they transfer those skills to toys and sensory materials that we had not actively taught. All right. Another key message here. Putting any type of technology, whether it's a speech-generating device, a low-tech device, or a tablet with an app in front of the child is not going to get the child to communicate, to talk, and to produce natural speech and language. The intervention actually just starts with that technology piece. But then it is very important to have some type of instructional approach or intervention procedures around that technology. It's not the technology itself that gets the child to produce a desired outcome. It's a combination of the technology with strong clinical instruction and intervention that helps to make the outcome happen in the very end. We used the modified protocol of the picture exchange communication system for various reasons. Many of our learners already had some PECS intervention in the school system. PECS is very popular in autism classrooms. It's already an evidence-based instructional manual, and it was not too difficult to adapt this for intervention on an iPad. So we are walking kids through 5 different phases. In phase 1, they are learning just to activate one symbol on an iPad, and then they get a desired item. In phase 2, the learner is being taught to pick up that iPad at one place and to walk over to a communication partner at various different points in the room. That distance is consistently being increased. In phase 3 is a very important skill that is being taught, namely discriminating between different symbols. So we are going from one symbol to 2 to 3, 4, 5, and so forth, to teach a little set, a little vocabulary set that we can expand on. In phase 4, the learner gets to the skill of putting together simple sentences. They are learning I want plus desired item first. We modified the protocol at this point quite a bit and added on more vigorous speech elicitation. What we would do is we would want to make sure that the parent or caregiver and the child read that final sentence one more time, and that there are attempts to get the child to say it with your own words. Now it's your turn, you try. And even if they just get one word or the initial sound of that word right, they would get differential reinforcement, they would get a little bit of extra praise and extra item to encourage them to do this again with their own natural speech. And in phase 5, first they learn to respond to the question, what do you want? And then all the prompts are taken away in an attempt to increase more spontaneous utterances, more spontaneous communication. The parents undergo a very rigorous training. They first start with a general workshop at the local parent support group. They receive written instructions, so-called cheat sheets. We do a lot of modeling and role-playing with them. We're walking them through those intervention procedures. And there is a checklist. So they have to get so and so many steps correct before we are letting them do the entire intervention with their own child. We have video resources on our YouTube channel where the parents can review a phase or part of the protocol if they need that for further training. In the end, the parent becomes the sole trainer for the child, and the clinician only provides feedback as much as needed. We've had 2 clinicians on board with advanced PACS training that were independently looking at those sessions, and they were checking off, did the parents do the right steps at the right moments in time, and if not, they were providing feedback to those parents. A treatment schedule was about 2 days per week with 1 to 2 sessions each day, and the session typically is about 20 trials on the iPad. Here you can see these cheat sheets, and this is one of those support videos, intervention videos on our YouTube channel. All of this is available. If you want to go to that YouTube channel, for example, you can get it from there. In this experiment, we had a cohort of 3 families. All had a child with severe autism. The youngest was 6 years and the oldest was 8 years. One child had a dual diagnosis of moderate to severe autism and Down syndrome as well. All had very limited speech at the beginning, no more than 15 words or word approximations. Most of the time they had no functional speech at all, no vocalizations, and would engage in some echolalic utterances or some jargon type of speech. All right. This is one of those participants. This is baseline before we started treatment, and Dad is putting the iPad out there on the table. You can see, you'll be able to see that the child doesn't know how to use the iPad yet for requesting, and Dad is presenting a few stimuli, favorite snacks that the child typically likes, and here's what this looks like. You could see many of the typical autistic symptoms, such as stereotypical behaviors, jumping up and down a little bit, jargon type of speech, vocal stimming, and then her prelinguistic behaviors consist of reaching and grabbing for items. She hasn't had developed a functional way yet of more appropriately asking for what she wants. So this is phase 1. We are teaching one symbol request. Dad is enticing the girl with the favorite snack items there. She has just one symbol on her iPad, and she's going to get help from a prompter to learn. When I put this on the sentence strip, then it produces speech for me, and I can get my desired item in return.
Checks. Yeah, excellent. This is good. Checks.
All right, and we taught the parents to always put a speech model with that desired item. And with this participant already, very early on, this had a nice effect of giving her another opportunity to imitate what Dad was saying. So she got the speech output from the device, and she gets a speech model from Dad. And then earlier, as we expected, she already started to imitate that with her own voice. Phase 2 is about picking up the iPad at one place, going over to different communication partners, and again, doing that little requesting routine.
Fritos.
Nice job.
It came a little late, but it came. All right. Now back to the table, one-on-one with Dad, and now we're teaching different symbols. We're going from 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And very important at this stage is that we're doing a correspondence check, that Dad is no longer just giving the item over to her. It's very important to control, does she clearly understand the symbol that's on her iPad? Does that match with what's on the tray? So whenever she makes an activation, she has to pick now the correct item from that tray. If that is not the case, then there's an error correction procedure where we are reteaching and matching the item with that symbol.
Fritos.
Fritos.
Fritos. Fritos.
Sensory toy.
Sensory toy.
This was part of that generalization probe that I talked about earlier. We wanted to see if we're presenting a whole range of new items, things we hadn't taught before, can she transfer the skill to request her sensory toys and play materials. Speech was not quite there that quickly, but it appeared later on. This is now constructing little sentences together with Mom. I want plus desired item.
I want raisins. I want raisins.
I want raisins.
Raisins.
And again, the generalization probe.
I want sensory toy.
Sensory toy.
I want Slinky.
I want Slinky.
Slinky.
Okay. Then in phase 5, she first gets the prompt, what do you want? And now she has to consistently respond to that. And then later on, we are fading out all prompts. We're doing a little bit of role playing where we're all sitting around the table and playing like, acting like we are all enjoying some dinner or snack time activity, and she's participating in this. And the task for her is to more spontaneously ask for her items and snacks.
What do you want? I want.
I want cats.
Checks. What do people down here want? I'll have some cake.
So delicious.
I want cakes.
I want kicks.
Say it one more time.
I want kicks.
Cakes.
I know, those are good, aren't they? Oh, I'm so scared to have some Minute Maid. That is good Minute Maid.
I'm having raisins.
Bridget, what do you want?
I want Minute Maid.
I want Minute Maid.
Say it again.
I want Minute Maid.
All right. Then we thought if someone is this far along already with her natural speech production, can we demonstrate what happens if we're taking the AAC completely out of the game now? So we started fading the iPad out, and here's what this looked like.
I want Pringles.
I want Pringles. I want Pringles.
Pringles.
Can I have that iPad? iPad is taking a break. Oh.
I want Fruit Roll. I want Fruit Roll. I want Fruit Roll.
Fruit roll-ups, yeah.
I want
want Pringles. I want Pringles.
Pringles.
All right. Then it's very important for us to assess maintenance and again generalization skills. So 6 to 8 weeks after this intervention was done, we went back into the family home trying to reassess, is she still producing those requests through her own natural speech? And there's this little play scenario, everyone's sitting around in a circle. This is her twin sister, who does not have any autism, by the way. And now she's still doing her requests using her own voice.
I want the sensory toy. I want sensory toy. I want sensory toy.
Hey, Emmy, you want to play the monkey game? I have a purple sensory toy. You put it on your face! That was funny!
I want the light glow. I want purple sensory toy. I want sensory toy. I want sensory.
Here, Emmy, can you take one side of the monkey?
I want purple sensory toy. I want purple sensory.
Hello. Sit up, silly. Sit up.
I'm going to put sensory toy on my hand.
You are.
I want purple sensory toy. I want purple sensory toy. I want purple sensory toy.
You're asking. Can I have the orange one?
No!
All right. Here's our data. We'll start with the effects on requesting skills. These are the 3 participants. The baseline is documented here. They have very little to no functional communication skills, don't know how to request. Then this is the little girl that we saw, very quick acquisition curve and has no problems going throughout all the 5 phases and maintaining that skill even if we faded the iPad out. Typically, other individuals take a little bit longer, but also can go through all those 5 phases. What we typically see is once we shift to a new phase, once we teach a slightly different skill and difficulty increases, they first drop a little bit down to baseline levels, and then they need some intervention sessions to get back up to this level of mastery. Out of the cohort of 3 children, 2 learned to request using their own natural speech, and 1 participant is at that level that he is using the iPad as his primary mode of communication. When we are looking at speech production, a little bit of a more varying picture. Great outcome for this little girl that then ended up having no need for AAC at all anymore and was doing everything with her own natural voice. Another participant got to that level, but very much later throughout those 5-phase protocol. And that 3rd participant, again, never made an actual word or word approximation, but he is still a very happy child. Mom is here today, and she can confirm that we have learned parts of his personality, discovered parts of his character that we've never seen before, because now he's very fluent, very strong iPad communicator. So it's not always necessary to have that high expectation that we're actually getting to this point of natural speech production. Depends on the level of functioning and diagnosis that the child has, what outcomes they in the end up with. But everybody mastered that 5-stage protocol and was becoming a very fluent iPad communicator, and 2 of the children went far ahead and actually developed their own natural speech. So from those research results, we learned that taking such an evidence-based practice approach is really key to app development. Not only do we have the data to confirm what's beneficial, we also learning very many things from this close relationship with the parents and clinicians that are providing input here, and that really helps to steer app design in the right direction. Technology is key, but also adding the right instruction intervention approach around it is what finally leads to success. SPEAKall intervention can have a strong impact on natural speech production, natural speech development, and the nice thing about it is it completely refutes that myth that AAC prevents speech. We were actually able to show that at a certain point we can completely fade out that AAC component and continue with regular speech-language therapy and work on natural speech production. And parents can be part of SPEAKall intervention. AAC services are often very expensive and difficult to organize, especially if there's a lack of AAC specialists. If parents can be included in these intervention efforts, it can maximize the efforts, the attempts to provide intervention to their child. However, we would always recommend that whenever possible, an AAC professional should be around and should supervise those attempts as much as possible so that parents aren't left alone, have someone they can rely upon and they can consult with. All right, I'm shifting it over now to my colleague Emily. And while Emily is going to show you the very many great things you can also do with SPEAKall, going beyond requesting, I'm going to pass around this iPad here, and you can sign up for our newsletter. We're not going to spam you with too much stuff, but if you like to see our intervention protocol, you want to have access to those cheat sheets and intervention videos and so forth, you can sign up and we'll send this out to you.
Okay.
Yeah.